As you know, on Sunday night or Monday morning of every week, we post a new expository semiotics explaining why we would choose which lectionary readings. But in these readings, our dream is, and our desire is, to help you read the signs and fondle the details and spot the seminal metaphors, the condensed signs and the stories that are key for preaching to a digital culture. So strap on your seatbelt and join us as we prospect our passages for today.
This is the fourth Sunday in Lent. This is LenTalk number 156, and we have some great passages today. It was hard to choose one. I mean, the first one is the reading from Samuel, 1 Samuel 16. How long will you grieve over Saul, is how it begins in verse 1. And this is a culture that doesn't know how to grieve. It doesn't like grieving. We don't have funerals anymore. We have celebrations of life. We don't allow for grieving. And the whole tradition of grieving and mourning seems to be lost to us. So I was tempted to do that one. And then of course Psalm 23. I mean, whoa. How can you not take that one, sweet? And then the reading from Ephesians, live as children of light. What does it mean for us to live in the light and as children of light? But the one I picked, I just am so drawn to this story, is the Gospel of John, 9th chapter. There's 41 verses. I don't want to, you can read them. I just want to highlight what's going on here. But this is the story of the blind man from birth who was asked by his disciples, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? And Jesus corrects this. He helps them into another theological correctitude and rectitude. And he said neither. Neither this man nor his parents sinned. He was born blind. This is part of the God's providence and God's world. And then he himself says, as long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. And then as he said this is when he recreates the initial creation of God's creation of humans. He spat on the ground, made mud with the saliva, and spread the mud on the man's eyes. Remember how God scooped us out of Genesis 2? Scooped us. We're this clump of clay, dirt mixed with water. God fashions it, and that's what's, go wash in the pool of Siloam. And so he washed and came back to see. Now this is what I want to spend time on, okay? The neighbors, the friends, the family. And how do they deal with this person? All their life has been born blind, and suddenly they can see. And of course you expect they're going to be rejoicing and ecstatic and celebrating. Hello. And that's why I want to focus on, what do you do with people who throw ashes in your ice cream? There are people out there, and maybe sometimes you've done it too, and I know I've done it at times, and I repent, that in the times of jubilation and joy, we bring in something negative and something downer, and we throw ashes in somebody's ice cream. And it goes all the way here, verses 18, and the Jewish establishment, religious establishment gets on it. We don't think this is what happened. And then they call him in, and instead of rejoicing with him, they interrogate him, and then they go visit his parents, and is this really true? And his parents are a little scared to testify about actually what happened, because they know they're on the line too. And then they call, but you were healed by a sinner. They were calling Jesus a sinner. And he says, I do not know whether he is a sinner. One thing I do know, that though I was blind, now I see. So he sticks to this testimony. He sticks to his story. then it says, literally, here's verse 28, then they reviled him. Reviled him. So here he is. He's freed from his blindness. He can see, and instead of rejoicing, he gets revilement. They are attacking him. And then they come to the point where it ends with, when he defends. I don't know where he comes from, but he opened my eyes and he gave me sight, and so I'm gonna sing his praises. And then Jesus comes back to him, tries to encourage him, and then it ends with verse 21. Jesus said to them, if you were blind, you would not have sin, but now that you say, we see, your sin remains. As the blind man, now sighted, is called a sinner too. So I just want to talk about, what do you do with people who constantly throw ashes in other people's ice cream? I will never forget the psychologist in 1978. His name was M. Scott Peck. He wrote a book, The Road Less Traveled. The first 3 words of the book nailed something that spread like wildfire, and people bought the book partly for these first 3 words. And it was just the book began with, life is difficult. That was it. And in many ways, that was kind of the best part of the book. I mean, the book wasn't all that revolutionary, but it's just, he stated the obvious. Sometimes the hardest thing to state is the obvious. We're oblivious to the obvious. And just, life is difficult. And what makes life so difficult are difficult people. It's difficult people that make life so difficult. Now, we need to realize that we can be difficult at times too. So I don't want to get on any high horse here. That we are all difficult people. We have met the difficult person, and they is us. I mean, he is me. So let's realize that we contribute to this problem of life is difficult, being difficult people. But of all the most difficult people, I think downers are the most difficult. And these people I call downers, these people that just love to throw ashes in your ice cream. If they see you enjoying something and having success at something and really taking pleasure in something, they will find a way to down it and bring you down with it. Now, everybody's favorite saint is Saint Francis, and we have a pope now that Francis. Everybody, he was such a favorite saint that no pope dared to name himself after Saint Francis. He was so honored and revered. This pope did. So we have Francis I, but not my favorite saint. Let me just say, I love the way in which he had history's first creche. He created the creche tradition, the Christmas manger scenes, and he also had a real understanding of nature as part of God's revelation, and God reveals who God is partly. There's a revealing of the divine in nature, and we need to take care of it. I love that too. But here's a guy who had the idea that God did not want you basically to enjoy life. I don't know how else to put it. He practiced Ash Wednesday every day, okay? And he had a pouch of ashes he kept with him. And whenever he used the ashes as we use like salt and pepper. And if he was enjoying his food too much, he would pepper them with ashes, because it would remind him that food was not the goal of life, but serving God was the goal of life. Now, my mother had a saying, you don't live to eat, you eat to live. And that's true. So in that way, St. Francis has some wisdom here to teach us. But still, God gave us, the first commandment is eat freely. The last commandment of the Bible is drink freely. God put food here. The first thing God creates after humans is trees, where he made with fruit and all sorts of abundance. And so, and it came to a head at the end of his life. And I don't know how many of you know this, but when St. Francis was dying, he ordered that his body be covered with sackcloth and ashes, because he said, I'm going to return to dust and ashes anyways, so might as well help it along. And so he ended in ashes and in dust. Remember that Don't Rain on My Parade song from Funny Girl? There are people who relish raining on your parade. There are people who relish spoiling the fun. They just live to put a damper on something that's good and to dampen your enthusiasm. So these are downers. These are ash throwers. They always have something bad to say. They complain. They critique. Whatever it is, they can find a way to judge it. They're almost impossible to please. They are, for me, they're energy suckers. They're excitement dampers. And the only thing worse than a downer is a better than or a one-upper. Do you know what I'm talking about? These are the know-it-alls who will always try to one-up you or show off that they know more than you do. Or, how you feeling today? Oh, I'm okay. I just got a pain in my leg. Oh, let me tell you about pain in the leg. You have no idea what a pain in the leg is like. When I had surgery on my leg, and so you just, okay, I will not do that anymore. They specialize in name dropping and comparing. And I want to save the know-it-alls and the one-uppers for a whole other sermon. Today, it's the people in our story with this blind man, the finger pointers, the nitpickers, the wound lickers, who find fault with anything and everything, who bring you down with them, who turn every disappointment into a disaster, who chronically complain, and who have no idea what it means to rejoice with those who rejoice. They can only mourn. They can only negate. They cannot say no to the negative. And they love to fight. Oh, do they love to fight. And when you're just in the midst of kind of praising God and celebrating what God's doing and feeling high and lifted up as you're lifting up Christ, they will find a way to find something to fight about. You know, there are 66 wars going on in the world right now, at least. And that doesn't include the fights that are going on inside the church. We are fighting has become a Christian sport almost, and the church has become a boxing rink. Already in the 2nd century, the pagan Celsus observed that though Jews and Christians quarreled, they did not quarrel as loudly and viciously as different groups of Christians quarreled with each other. And he said that this is just one of the characteristics of Christians, that there's nothing like Christians like better to do than to fight with each other. And too much of the faith has become, too much of Christianity has become a razor-bladed religion, which doesn't have, even goes beyond critics. We have crusaders and the crusading spirit. Roland Bainton, the great Reformation scholar of another era, said there are 4 features of the crusader spirit. Number 1, the cause is holy. Number 2, the crusaders are godly and the enemy is ungodly. Number 3, God fights for the crusaders and God fights against the opponents. And number 4, you prosecute the war unsparingly and you take no prisoners. Sound like any place you know? Sound like any churches you know? Sound like any denominations or tribes you know? So how do we deal with these negative, throw ashes on everything people? And how do we do so in a Jesus way? Now, to do this, I think there's a couple things we got to prep ourselves for, and there's some prep work that has to be done. Number 1, you have to secure your identity so you can be secure in your identity when dealing with these people. So you got to kind of meditate on, okay, who am I? Whose am I? Where's my identity? What story am I living in? I'm living in the Jesus story. So you got to kind of remember yourself to the identity that that God has given you. Number two, don't take it personally. These people do it with everybody. I mean, this is not just you. It's not just you having your favorite. I mean, butter. I love pecans. Any kind of pecan ice cream is my favorite, or coconut. It's kind of a tie. I love pecan pie and coconut pie. Coconut cake. Okay. Coconut ice cream, butter pecan ice cream, whatever. They will find a way. And it's not just the butter pecan and the coconut. They'll do it with every kind of ice cream, every kind of person. This is just who they are. The third thing is, if you realize, okay, I can't take this personally, they do this to everybody, is you have something to learn from them, okay? So it's listen and learn. You learn more from your critics and your complainers in some ways than you do from your friends and cheerleaders and your balcony people. Your balcony people kind of take a, he can do no wrong approach, or whatever he does, we're going to celebrate him and love him and just cocoon him in affection and friendship. But so you can see more when your people, even when they just do this routinely and naturally to come at you with their ashes, you can still learn something from them. So listen and learn. And it's a cliche, but I think it's a good one. Don't react, respond. Don't react instinctively. Respond thoughtfully and mercifully, which is where I want to begin. So here's a Jesus response to those who throw ashes in your ice cream. Number one, and this is, I say this, but let me tell you, this is not easy. This is not easy. See Jesus in them. See Jesus in them. Realize that we all have fallen short of the glory of God. All of us. We all suck. And human suckitude cannot be overstated. We all are at the same time saint and sinner. And this is a criticism culture. So we especially suck in this area. We are really nasty, critical, easily offended people who strike back. This is a New York Times kind of review of the hundreds of people who had posted Amazon reviews of a gallon jug of whole milk. And here were some of you ready? This was one of the comments. I give this Tuscan milk 4 stars simply because I found the consistency a little too milk-like for my taste. Okay, it's milk. So here's somebody critiquing a gallon of Tuscan milk because it was too milk-like. You just can't please some people. And you all know what I'm talking about. You just can't please some people. Whenever Mother Teresa would meet someone who was particularly obnoxious, hateful, mean, disturbed, negative, she would say only that there was Jesus, you ready, in a distressing disguise. There's Jesus in a distressing disguise. I'm not saying we have a no-fault attitude towards these people, a no-fault default. But I do say we ought to have a mercy default, a kindness default. And often with these people, I just find myself, Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy, Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy, Lord have mercy. I just say it over and over again, Lord have mercy, as I try and see Jesus. And number 2, listen and empathize. This is my listen, learn, and maybe listen, learn, and lean in to what they're saying. Here's a fundamental principle I have no right to argue with you until I can state back to you your case at your satisfaction. In other words, until I have listened to what you're saying and I can say to you, okay, this is what I'm hearing. Can you tell me that this is the case you're making? And do I have this right? And then you tell them, this is what I'm hearing you say that your argument is. Until that happens, I have no right to argue with you because I have not listened and heard you, and I haven't heard you out. We don't do this, we're just two people shouting at each other, and that's where the world is right now. Everybody's shouting at one another, nobody's listening to each other, nobody's saying, okay, am I hearing you say this? Is this what I don't want to misinterpret. No cheap shots here. Just tell me, are you okay with my interpretation of this as your argument? So that's number 2. Number 3, this is hard. Never respond to criticism that gets personal. When somebody throws ashes at you and you feel like they're throwing ashes on your ice cream because it's your ice cream, it's hard to keep your head. They started calling the healed blind man a sinner. I mean, he's been healed, and now he's been liberated, but because he's been liberated, he's now a sinner. I mean, how do you not take that personally? A bad review can get personal. And I've had my share of, some people love my book, some people think I'm off. Just begin with the premise that whatever you do, you're going to be criticized. And let me take a very bad but a revealing example. ISIS, Abu al-Zarqawi. He's the guy that beheaded people, and he got criticized from other ISIS leaders because he cut throats too fast. And they were critical of him and wanted to come after him because he didn't slow it down so everybody could see all that there was to what it meant to cut the throats of the infidels. Whatever you do, good or evil, there's going to be criticism. So it's part of life, and never respond to that which gets personal. Number 4, celebrate before you cerebrate. This is something I tell all my students. You cheer before you critique. Be an arm waver before a nitpicker and an ash thrower. Your first response is, this is what I can learn from what you just did. What can rise out of those ashes what phoenix is rising out of those ashes you just threw on my joy, on my success. And once you have no right to critique somebody until you first celebrated them. Celebrate before you cerebrate, before you think, critique, and tear down and rip up. No, sometimes it has to be done. But at first, we ought to not be in that default mode. We ought to cringe before criticizing and critiquing and complaining about each other. So we celebrate before we cerebrate. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't inspire the nation with, I have a complaint. He did not win the world. I have a beef. I have a criticism. I have a kvetch. No, he started with a celebration. I have a dream, an affirmation, a yes. And Paul calls Jesus God's yes, the ultimate celebration, everlasting. By the way, throwing ashes is too easy anyways. The negative is always too easy. The complacencies of complaint make ash throwing and nitpicking very, very lazy. And that's my problem with a lot of the deconstructionists talk around everybody. I can see all these broken eggs, but where's the omelet? The omelet is there to feed a hungry world. And that's what we're about. So enjoy your ice cream. Know that there are going to be people looking at it. They're going to want to critique it. And there are some who's just going to take aim and throw ashes on it. But you just kind of scoop off the ashes and keep eating. Smile at them. What could I learn from this ash throwing? and make sure, this is the most important thing, in a world of difficult people, that you and I don't want to be one of those difficult ones that makes life so difficult. Jesus said, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. Come unto me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Not more work, not more criticism, not more complaining, not more ashes. In fact, the ashes turn into the rising, risen. Out of those ashes, out of the dust, comes the risen, rising Christ. And that's what we're moving towards this Lent. Deal with your ash throwers with mercy and with love, and see Jesus in them.